up. And last week, Jerry, we noticed there's like a delay, right? It says you were live, but then YouTube seemed like it didn't pick up the first like 10 seconds or something like that. So I'm just stalling for time now on that assumption. All
Right. When you
so
introduced either it was Michael or Jason, I had to dub in another intro from somewhere else.
Okay, yeah, because I saw the YouTube was like just cut right into the middle of the intro or something. Well, here we are, we're live, and as listeners and viewers, as viewers will see, we have a returning guest, very special guest, Shelley Watson. Welcome back to Command Control Power.
It's great to be back. Thank you for asking me.
Yeah, it's great to have you back. We got some good feedback from the re-airing of a show we did with you a while back. So that was we just knew we had to invite you back on. And actually, this is our first time seeing you live. So this is great to have you on video as well. So welcome.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had commented to Joe when we re-aired your broadcast how eloquent you were and how well spoken. And I said, gee, Joe, we really got to get Shelley back on. I mean, even if you weren't well-spoken and eloquent, we would still have you back on.
But you might wait a couple of weeks before sending it.
That's right. Exactly.
But in another life, you were a presenter, yes?
Oh, yes. I've been a presenter many times in my technical career. And then what did I do? I've probably the one professional thing I've done longer than anything else is be a trainer. So I'm sort of used to talking to groups of people, large and small.
Well, it shows.
Yeah. It makes it easy, right?
Nice to have a professional broadcaster.
It makes it easier. Also my ancestry.com shows that I'm 30% ham, and that really helps in situations like this.
Nice.
Really?
Nice.
I wasn't sure if I should go with that. Oh, interesting. Ham.
That's right. I was thinking, a hamming it up joke, but then I'm thinking, is this a nationality that I'm not aware of? Please explain, because I'm still confused. Was it just a good joke?
Well, I'm a ham. I mean, I'm an extrovert. I am an extrovert. I spent youth in my entire high school career was some kind of performing. So for me, getting up in front of people is just natural. And then being a trainer, I really enjoy communicating with people if there's something valuable that's going to, add to their lives in whatever way. So that's really a big part of it for me.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, we look forward to digging into that a little bit more because, of course, the last time you were on, you were representing your company, Wheelwrights. And I want to understand a little bit more about how, I guess, you kind of closed the chapter of Wheelwrights and opened a new chapter. And, it's like you can take the consulting out of the consultant, but you can't take the consultant out of consulting, or some kind of what phrase I'm looking for there. But you're back at it basically, because it sounds like you just enjoy helping people that much.
Well, yeah, I'm definitely back at it, and there's a couple of reasons for that. One is, so my version of that saying, Joe, is you can take the girl out of California, but you can't take the California out of the girl.
Right. Nice.
So that's what I say about me. And I think it also applies to the extrovert and the entrepreneur, because I've always enjoyed startups. In my previous life, so my life is sort of divided like pre-kid, post-kid, and pre-kid in the 80s, the late 80s, I worked for a software company that was bought by Apple. So I got to do a lot of public stuff with them. So yeah, I've just always really liked it. Yeah.
And are you still training these days? I mean, like on a formal level? I know you probably do it one-on-one with individuals and things like that, but do you still get an audience?
No, I haven't really. Apple, as very well, Sam, Apple changed their delivery model for Apple certified training. And so, I bid that a a fond farewell when they did. And then I've had a number of sort of training opportunities with Wheelwrights for various things. And then before Wheelwrights as well. Since the pandemic, I have not really been eager to get out and about. My husband has some health issues and we're both over 60. So I'm prudent. And actually, I really love that we can do so much via video.
Yeah, I mean, it comes pros and cons for me personally, but I get what you're saying. I mean, like, you're taking a cautious and smart approach. It makes total sense. And there's the convenience of it all as well. I mean, there's just, sometimes I do get bored in this little box of a room I have, and just, I want to get out. But, I mean, you can take a good walk for that one, I guess.
So what do you do when you get bored in the home office, Sam?
I go downstairs, I play with the dog, I go walking around, or I'll just hop in the car and go grab a sandwich somewhere. Even if I have food at home, I'm like, I gotta go somewhere. I gotta see people.
Yeah.
And it's just such a different experience from not being able to shake someone's hand or walk around, like Shelley. I mean, let's just walk around to their screen and see what they're doing and work with them locally. It's a very different thing. So it takes some getting used to, even after a few years of doing it.
It's true, it does. And for me personally, I really like that I have an opportunity in the new business to generate some more training video content. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah, tell us more about that. I mean, this is something, I'm sure Joe has something up his sleeve, but I'm curious about the video content and pieces like that you offer with the new business.
Right. Perhaps you could take us through the journey of how Wheelwrights sunsetted and how you arrived at where you are at today.
Thanks, Jerry, because I had not forgotten Joe's original question. So Chris and I partnered. We formally opened what was called DW Partners because, as I told Chris at the time, you just got to get a name. You figure out the fun stuff later. But you have to tell the Secretary of State something, right? So DW Partners in April 2007. And we focused on small to medium business consulting, and that was a good long run. I mean, it would have been 17 years this month, the last day of this month. So that's a pretty long, that's a pretty long time. And we had talked about kind of changing our model a little bit over the last few years, but just couldn't really settle on something that we wanted to take action on. Plus Chris took on extra time with one of our primary customers. And so they put a lot of demands on his time. So by the time we talked about it last summer, the handwriting was on the wall. Chris was ready for a 6-month nap. And I mean, even if we had kept Wheelwrights going, he would have needed a substantial sabbatical. And we hadn't done the pre-work to structure the business so that he could do that. So I pretty much, the way I put it is, I called it, right? I just like, okay, it's time,
Rip the Band-Aid.
Yeah.
And what year would that have been? That would have been pre-pandemic, right?
Which year, Jerry?
When you ripped the Band-Aid off and Wheelwrights sunsetted.
That was just last year.
Oh.
Like, I feel like I have a whole conference talk to give about how you close a business in 3 months.
Wow.
Yeah. Holy cow.
Yeah, that's a whole topic in and of itself. And I have to say, one of the things that I really got out of that experience was a different perspective on vendors. Because it turns out closing vendor relationships, it was harder than anything else. The IRS, the state of Washington, they're happy to have you do the paperwork and say via con Dios, but vendors, and they range so much between how easy they are to work with, how difficult they are. I don't know. I mean, there are some vendors that have a reputation in our community for slapping those handcuffs on you and making it tough. So
interesting.
Wow.
So yeah, that was a very interesting process. And
Shelley,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
I know. I'm curious about that though. I mean, is there anything, because there were transactions in process? Like, how were they trying, or why were they trying to stop you?
Well, it wasn't so much that they were trying to stop me. However, some vendors have their arrangements structured such that you go through many, many more steps to try to untangle the relationship.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes it's what you said, Sam, where it's an annual relationship. Sometimes even in a month-to-month relationship, depending on the vendor, they wanted to take 2 or 3 months to wind down. Oh, let's say, for example, a customer had a Google Workspace backup with a vendor, and you wanted to close that down or move it to another vendor or move it to a house account, whatever. That one vendor in particular wanted to draw the process out. So it was just constantly, oh, we can't close it now because you're going to be billed for storage. Right? You have to delete those storage archives. Oh, we can't do that because you don't have an arrangement. So there was, but see, I took square dancing, so they were unable to get around me.
Nice. Well, so Shelley, does that have to do with like needing a replacement for yourself? Like, would you need a new kind of like party of record or, consultancy to take over the relationship for the client, as opposed to kind of just having the client have the relationship directly with the vendor in that scenario?
So in our case, I did a couple of things. Because we were also closing the business, many of my customers were transitioning to other IT. So one of my cloud backup customers was they wanted to go to a mixed Windows environment, which we didn't want to support. And they had a new IT firm that was going to do that. And they had a replacement vendor. So there were a couple of those instances. In most cases, the quickest way to untangle Wheelwrights was to move the customer to a house account with the vendor.
Okay.
And then that gives us, for the customers with whom I continue to work, then I had time in the new relationship to figure out what we wanted to do, but they weren't going to lose their backup stream.
Right. Got it. So would you do anything differently if you rewound the clock, those 17 years back to, kind of forming some of these relationships where you were essentially reselling the services of these vendors and, kind of holding that relationship? In some cases, what I do is I just have the client have the relationship with the vendor. And in some cases, I regret doing that, of course. Like when I switched all my clients to Microsoft 365, I'm kicking myself now, dozens of clients later thinking, wow, I could have some kind of recurring revenue from having gone through that, to this day and beyond. So I regret that in some cases, but in other cases, it's just really clean to say, this is your relationship. You pay the vendor, I manage it for you. So it would be easier in those cases to offboard, but I don't know that that's necessarily how I want to structure my business, planning to offboard myself. So yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
I actually think that's a really good topic, Joe, because in some ways you do want to think about how to offboard yourself. Like what would happen to your clients if you, as Chris used to say, a lottery ticket fell on him and he was no longer able to work. What would happen and how hard would it be for your customers to transition? Wheelwrights had the philosophy that we wanted customers to have the ability to walk away at any time, because we wanted that ability too. Now, didn't happen. That didn't happen very much, but it sure sounds good to a customer to say, we don't have any little golden strings on you. You own the vendor relationship. We manage the technology for you. In many ways, I think that was a good fit for our partnership. I'm now in a position where it actually makes more sense for me to try to bring people into a single environment to manage. And so I'm actually looking at doing it the opposite way, where we're bringing people in. I do find that that works well with small customers. So,
yeah. Gotcha.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I mean, we've talked about this a number of times too in the past, Joe, right? Where we're talking about like, do you want the vendor relationship to be through you, and how quote unquote sticky does that make you with the customer? And do you want that feeling for the customer? And so even when we do have the relationship, sometimes, just think about what Shelley was saying. Like, I think sometimes it's key to still tell them it's okay if we break up, if we're no longer together, it will still be able to be disconnected. And I like exactly what you said there, which is a big piece of why customers might feel more comfortable with you, is because they know you're not like latching on and making sure that they can't go anywhere.
Right. Yeah.
One thing I point out to our customers, and I still have this in my new contract, but I always wanted customers to realize that the contract, they can walk away from a contract at any time. If they're not in a core services relationship, which was our hybrid MSP consulting product, that required 30 days notice to offboard you from systems. But otherwise, you're free to walk anytime. You can fire me anytime, because my job is to earn your business every month. Nice. That should be my focus, is earning your business. The other thing that I want it to do is to make deposits in the trust account, so that when something happens, my customer will have some slack to give me.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that too. I call that technical capital, as I've, used the phrase on the show before. And it's sort of like you're earning. I like that idea of depositing, trust, depositing in that trust account. It's the same idea. It's like you've earned that, a certain amount of leeway where, that didn't go as well as we normally would expect it to. And, thank you for understanding and allowing me to kind of make it right, as opposed to, they just want to blow up the relationship at that point at the first sign of trouble, because maybe you haven't earned their trust over the month. So it's a great way to do business, is to just, hold ourselves to that standard of always trying to earn their business, and not artificially, what did some of our colleagues call it at one point? It's like job security, having like, I have all of your accounts, you can't do anything unless you continue to pay me.
You a mustache.
Yeah, exactly. It's really so cynical of a way to do business. And, it just doesn't feel right. And another example of that is clients will ask me, do you sell the Mac? Are you selling me these products that you're recommending? And I'll say, no, this would be a transaction between you and Apple, or you and this other vendor. I'm just making the recommendations that I make based on my expertise, based on what, I feel is a good fit for you. So it kind of like takes away that, maybe that bias or those mixed incentives, where if they're suspicious that I might be like saying, well, you really need the 2 terabytes, because I'm going to get an extra $5 on the commission or something like that. So yeah, it's the same idea. It's like, that should be separate from the money that we're earning, is that the trust in those recommendations we're making.
That actually speaks to something that is a real core of my new business philosophy. And Sam, when I was re-listening to the show, my last interview with you, you had mentioned something that I actually am spending a fair amount of time thinking about, and that's motive. So there's this idea that in order to earn people's trust, you want to show them all these things, your reliability, and you'll do what you're going to do when you say you're going to do it. But there's also always self-interest, because they're hiring you for money, right? So how do you communicate to a customer that they can trust your motives? In my case, So Wheelwrights, we had customers for most of the customers that we had when we closed were 10, 8+ years. We just, unless they just came on in the last 3 or 4 years. So
yeah,
we really believed in keeping customers.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's a piece of it. But now when you're starting over, like I have some customers that came with me, but I'm filling the pipeline again, which is a new experience after years of supporting the same customers. It's a privilege to be able to say that. It's very nice to be at that point in my career, but you have to establish that you can be trusted. And how do you demonstrate to customers what your motive is, right? So I think that's a really interesting question that I spend a fair amount of time thinking about.
What were some of your kind of
hats off to me then, by the way.
Just want
to put it out there.
Nice.
Go ahead, Joe. Sorry.
Well, so Shelley, what were some of your kind of insights about, how to demonstrate what your motives are and how to earn that trust again, starting fresh?
Yeah, well, the first one is the one Joe brought up, which Sam brought up, which was the example of you recommend someone a solution that takes less technical support. So they're paying more for the widget and less for the expensive IT consulting.
Yeah.
Right. We've probably all used that a bunch of times.
Totally.
Well, that absolutely shows motive.
Absolutely. It comes up when a client says, well, can I just, keep this computer working a little bit longer? And back in the day when we did that kind of upgrade, we would say, well, I'd rather have you spend this money, put this money toward a new computer. You'll get a lot more benefit from the new hardware than paying me to do this, this labor to upgrade this computer and maybe only get another year or two out of it. And, they would realize like I'm positioning them putting money in Apple's pocket versus putting money in my own pocket. And then they'd really say, okay, I get it. You're not just trying to tell me to spend a bunch of money, because it benefits you. It doesn't benefit you. It benefits Apple, if anybody. So, and it benefits the customer. And they really see that from that kind of positioning. That's a great one. Do you have any other insights around?
Yeah. Although I'm kind of stuck on that one now, Joe, because I'm thinking there's that 3%, man. There's that coffee.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly. That big 3% commission, which we don't even get anymore. It for a while there, it was maybe a little bit of an incentive to just send them my link, when it was really easy just to even recommend to a home user, for example, buy this computer, get my little kickback. It barely pays for the conversation because we would oftentimes recommend that for free, so we're spending the time to evaluate what they need and then make a recommendation, but at least we get something out of it, without charging the client directly. So actually they benefit in that way too. But now there's just there's no conflict there, because we're not getting really anything for it in most cases.
Yeah, unless you're using the custom store for business. Then you're just not, it's not. And we always told people about that while also telling them how little it was. And if they're only buying computers once every 4 or 5 years, that's, the real deal is it never went in my budget. So
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's barely a blip. You can't really base your decision making on that kind of revenue. So
and it's good for a laugh with the customer, right? You can always kind of turn it to a laugh at, Apple likes to pat us on the head.
Yeah, that's right, exactly. Yeah.
But to answer your question, Joe, one of the other ones that I think is important, which is just kind of how I like to approach relationships, which is something I learned in parenting. So any of you have children?
Jerry and Sam do.
Jerry and I. Yeah.
Jerry and Sam, okay. So there's a thing where you want your kids to listen to you when you tell them no, to know that you mean no. So the way I did that with my kids was I tried to save my no for only when it was needed. And then when I said no, they knew I meant it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, turn that to your customers. Customers ask us for things all the time, right? And when you're getting to know a customer and establishing that relationship, what the solutions are going to be, how much time is it going to take, all the stuff they're thinking about. If I can say yes to them, to things they want a lot of the time, then when I say no, they believe me that I have a good reason. So I want to establish a subconscious pattern that if I say no to something, I have a good reason for it. It's not just to put money in my pocket, right? So again, these are the kind of subtle things, because, you know, some of the other stuff we're all doing, right? You ask your customers for referrals. You ask your colleagues for referrals, right? I think in the last show that we did together, we talked a lot about the referring business. Definitely. And you know, and getting ratings and reviews and things like that. Those things establish trust. But I'm always on the lookout for just that little subtle way, just to let them know. What do you guys do?
Yeah, you mean to establish that trust experience with the customer? Yeah. I think, you know, if you guys can hear me okay, hopefully my audio was a little weird before.
Sounds good.
One of the things that I like to harp upon there is what you were talking about in terms of purchasing new hardware versus let me work on this. And Joe was talking about that too, is, you know, I think part of it is how you carry yourself personally with the customer too. And just that you're not just trying to earn their trust professionally, but also just personally, that there's something about personality, you know, bedside manner and how you go about it and making sure that they feel comfortable with you as a person. So like, even in that conversation of like, you know, I don't want to do the labor. Why don't you get a new Mac or something like that? I'm always also like, well, I just don't want to do that work. Like, I don't want the extra burden of working on a 10-year-old Mac. And I'm like, you're going to make me grumpy. I don't want to be grumpy. Let's work together. You get a new Mac.
And you don't want to see me grumpy.
But all joking aside, it's like about that personality. And I've worked with people where we don't have a good personality match, and sometimes they don't last. And that's okay by me, to be honest. Like, just, I can't, and we've talked about this many times. It's really difficult to work with people that don't have a working relationship that is respectful in both ways, and someone you find like you can talk to.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Shelley,
go ahead. I'm sorry, Jerry.
No, I was going to say we touched on this briefly, but I'm still just trying to wrap my head around Wheelwrights. I'm still back on that. Wheelwrights.
Oh, no worries.
And you've DBQ technology has been an official business for you said last 3 months or longer.
So I formed the business back at the end of August. So I was doing 3 jobs.
Because my question is, my ultimate
job, I was closing Wheelwrights, I was starting DBQ, and I was maintaining customers.
Wow.
Okay, so my ultimate question is, you had it in the back of your mind to always do this once Wheelwrights was officially closed. And so what sorts of things, now that you are captain of the ship with no other right hand or left hand people to assist you, lieutenants, right tenants, where are you steering this ship that might be profoundly different than where Wheelwrights was going? And I don't know if Joe segregated us due to age here, but have you noticed, I'm, you know, certainly probably older than you, have you noticed any, either internally or externally, any concern with clients looking at you and saying, I don't know how long Jerry's runway is. So if we take him on as a consultant, what, you know, is he going to be throwing in the towel 12 months from now or something like that? Because these are concerns that I have from time to time if I'm making a presentation with a new client. And I almost want to, if my friends Sam and Joe were closer to me in Connecticut, I would have one of them come and just, you know, be the young buck at the meeting.
Right.
So there's a lot of questions there, but I'll let
you could probably hire somebody on the internet, Jerry, to just like be the be the face of the company. Just like
right, but I would be I would probably get
you know?
into trouble if I listed the heading as looking for a young buck. So
That's
you might
right.
probably get the wrong type of person.
Well, I think
true.
any of us would get in trouble for that, Jerry. So
Yes.
I think that's an important community warning. Thank you. Oh my gosh. So I have a few answers to that. First of all, I may be older than you think. That's what I like. That's what I like. I like surprising people. And I don't mind saying, I like to joke this year, I'm turning 666. I mean, 66. So
Nice.
I hope I don't offend anyone, but I did figure out when my 66.6 birthday is. So.
Nice.
So at one point, when I realized that really Wheelwrights, we had run our course. We just ran our course. We were both ready to do something different. We had a really good, successful run, happy customers, went out on a high note. But when I realized that I wasn't going to get to go out, I don't get to retire. I may be 65, but I'm not going to retire. You know, heaven help me if there's any change to the retirement age or payouts, So I shed a few hot tears of fury that I wasn't going to just be eating bonbons on a lounge chair somewhere. And then I got excited about being an entrepreneur again. So that's kind of how it is for me.
It's in your blood.
Yeah.
I've always been interested in it. I went from working for corporations to working for startups in the 80s because I just liked startup energy lots better. But to answer your question, Jerry, because I feel you, I'm a woman. So I haven't really had the opportunity to find out if people are objecting to me because of my age.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, I say that's a bit of an exaggeration, obviously. But my female colleagues will give me a shout out that they've sat in meetings and had a male colleague say something and you say it. And then the man with the beard says it. And I mentioned this in our last talk and all of a sudden it's gospel. So.
Yeah, I hear you there.
And I was actually a lot more concerned about that than I was the age. I talked to a SCORE mentor, and just a general shout out for people. Really, it's important to remember the free resources that are out there that our tax dollars pay for. Also, I just have to say, I have not signed into YouTube to join the chat, and it's just as well because I'd be chatting with my buddy M Space over there. Good to see you too, hon. And so I was worried about the gender piece of it. And my SCORE representative, who's just only a couple years older than me, said, most of the people he talks to who are starting businesses are in their 30s. They don't care about gender the way my contemporaries did.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought that was interesting. And I still haven't answered your age question, Jerry. So here is what I hope will be a funny story to do that.
But I think we should just spend a moment more on what you said, because it's really profound that there's so much of this prejudice out there in the workplace in 2024. And do you over time, did you actually see it improve at all, during your time at Wheelwrights in terms of this gender bias that these people had?
Well, it's a little different with customers, of course, because we really tried to have to work with customers that respected us, right? There were some customers that simply wanted to work with the engineer with the beard. And that kind of wound up being the way it went. You have to have somewhat of a rapport with customers. And turnabout is fair play. I had customers who just, preferred me being their first contact as opposed to Chris. But it was, it was there. And, it's not an exaggeration to say that it's one of the reasons to be your own boss.
Mm-hmm.
True.
I hear women colleagues in IT, in corporate life, at all sizes, we are still hitting the same prejudices, still sitting in meetings where it's like, okay, someone needs to scribe, and all heads turn to the woman.
Still. Wow.
Of course.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. This just...
I mean, remember, so if someone, what age are the parents of people in their 30s and 40s? Mm-hmm. They were raised probably by late boomers like me, mm-hmm. Who were raised by parents who, that's kind of how it worked. I mean, yeah.
Bias is real, and it takes generations to kind of to transform that and shed that. And I mean, for the benefit of the audio listeners, Susan at MSpace said it is not an exaggeration what you had mentioned earlier, about this bias. And so, there's just another voice to just second what you're saying. And I have to say, I was impressed and surprised to hear you say that, because we don't think about it as such a forefront issue still, but it's good to hear you say it's very real. It's bringing attention to it. So thanks for mentioning that. And I mean, I guess also, is there anything, what can we all do? I mean, I guess we just have to pay attention to these signals like you're describing, when you're in a meeting and all the men's heads turn to the woman to take notes or whatever it is, that's the bias that's, actually being presented in the moment. Maybe we can counter that and volunteer to do that, or just to, I mean, it would be good if those people could realize that's happening in that moment, right? To sort of see their own bias, maybe our own bias. I'm sure I'm just as susceptible to this. So any other advice, in those kinds of ways that we could counter this?
Shave your beard, Joe.
No,
Yeah, exactly. I'm here. I am a guy with a beard. I mean, it's just,
talking to you.
I'm part of the problem.
Joe, I had an ask. So thank you for opening the door to that, which is there absolutely are things that can be done. A couple of basic ones. One was made famous in the Obama administration, which is the process of amplification. And we talk about it from time to time in various settings, but it's really helpful to your women colleagues and just to other women in the room who are trying to be heard or seen, to amplify when they say something worth amplifying, when they say something smart, when they make a good point and nobody in the room gets it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I just want to piggyback on that really great thing Susan just said. She made a great point, and here's why that's so great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Susan.
And pointing out that it was Susan who said it, because I think as men, we sometimes have a tendency to echo something, in our own voice, and then other people will hear it as, oh, good point, Joe, so it kind of bypasses the actual, the issue, which is that we're trying to amplify the woman's voice and actually call attention to this person who said something, not take credit for it ourselves.
Well, yeah, and it's. I mean, we've all seen those, the IT crowd. There's a few great episodes of the IT crowd where that absolutely happens, right? Where only in that case, it's the boss who re-amplifies the person's.
Right.
Somebody makes a great point and the boss says, "Oh, I have this great idea." Well, that happens to us constantly, right? Wow. So we try to amplify each other, and our male colleagues who are paying attention can amplify us as well. Mm-hmm. And then I have another one.
Okay.
One more, which is really easy. It's learning to notice when there are no women in the room. And saying, we're talking about all of this, but we're all men in this room. Right. We're not, and research shows that the more diversity a company has, the more successful it is. You get better ideas from a diverse group. And so it's really important. If you notice that it's a room full of white men, you're not going to change it necessarily, but at least saying so that everybody in that room who would never have noticed, they would walk out not having any idea that they were in an echo chamber.
Right.
They'll remember that a man in that room noticed.
Yeah, I think that speaks volumes. And you know, if I could piggyback on the excellent thing that Shelley said right here. But in all seriousness, one of the things
what you did there, Sam.
Yeah, thank you. If I can, just from a personal standpoint, if you don't mind, also mention something that I've been trying to work on over the years that I think just because of confrontational issues I tried to stay away from, is when someone else that you might know well makes a statement that is derogatory or, you know, something that you don't agree with, you should take an opportunity to say something.
Yeah.
And I think through the years, I've gotten better at it, but I haven't been great at it. And that's a big piece that I think, because, you know, maybe you respect this person or they have more experience than you, or whatever the situation is, to actually not be afraid to speak up in that moment is important.
Or we're walking that fine line where we might have to call the customer out. And those are the times where you say, well, geez, I really don't feel this is right. What's happening here? And you need to be brave. You need to speak out.
Thank you for using the B word, Jerry. It really is about being brave, because these are new kinds of conversations. And when you're in a room that's all white men, you're super safe. No one's going to criticize you for not noticing or not saying anything. So I think it is a matter of being aware and being brave. And, you know, we appreciate it. We appreciate it. You know, the thing about calling someone out, and, you know, that's a fine line there, right? You have to use your best judgment in the moment. What I've seen a couple of things. I've seen men diffuse other men with humor, not deprecating humor.
Right.
But making a joke that doesn't like stick that guy with a pin, but turns it into a joke. And then take him aside later and say, hey, I just wanted to follow up with, I just wanted to explain why I made a joke at that moment. And it's really important that we pay attention to our women colleagues and make sure they feel just as safe and respected as we do, right? Yeah. The other thing I will say about that is when we're in business situations with customers who are engaging in personal behaviors that we don't like, people are teaching you about themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
They may not reveal it right away, but that's they're teaching you who they are. So pay attention to those clues. You know, we talked about in the last chat, we talked about the Shelley as canary in the coal mine. And this is one of those things I notice. I notice how people treat each other. I'm not a good fit for someone who has those kinds of relationships with their team.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's not how I treat my colleagues, my vendors, my team, or myself.
Yeah. I've taken to saying like, that's just not how I work. And sometimes clients they stop and they're like, oh, you know, and actually people can change. It's like sometimes they take a different tack with me also, because they think of us as like these, you know, hired help, and they can just like, you know, talk to us like it's, you know, like they're just directing us and telling us what to do and how to do it and that kind of thing. And then when we kind of like stop them and say, you know, this is just not how we work, let's have a conversation about it. It either goes in one of two ways. Either they come around to this way of, okay, now I know how to work with this person effectively, and they end up being a good relationship for us, or it's clearly not a fit, and it becomes, you know, it becomes very clear. the difficult part is like when I know that's who they are and they're going to just kind of put on a face for me, like I'm going to pretend that I'm a nice person to you because you need me to be nice, you know? And so, I mean, sometimes that works okay too, if it's like minimal interaction and I feel like I'm not enabling a toxic person or something, but you know, it is interesting when sometimes people do shift their whole way of interacting and it feels very genuine and it feels sustainable in that way, just by kind of putting that little marker in place, like, this is just not how we work. So let's,
And you remember too that you're also, I'm sorry, Sam, but I just wanted to say before I forget, 65-year-old here, you want them to know that you are someone who cares about how people are treated.
Yes. Right.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. That's a great point. Yeah.
And that I want to attract people like that. I don't care if they're a sweet summer child who can't find the non-existent button on their iPhone. I don't care.
Right.
I would much rather have someone with emotional intelligence.
Totally.
Yeah. And I think just to harp on that a little bit more, one of the things that I've, come to realize is even if they don't really appreciate what you said, to try and either correct them or diffuse it or whatever, if that happens enough times to that person, then they might get it. So you might be one of another 10 people that say it and that you contributed that little piece of time.
That's such a great point, Sam. The little grains of sand, it really makes a difference. The more times people hear things, the better. You don't know. You might be the first person they've ever heard. You might be the person who's the straw that pushes them over the edge to make that change we're talking about.
Yeah.
So just stick with it. Hang in there.
Yeah, that for me, that's a real big motivation, actually. I mean, I love helping people with technology and, it feels good to be good at doing that. But if I could have some influence beyond just technology, like in someone's, way of going through life, like that to me feels so much more profound than just like helping them, know how to like whatever achieve their goal in Microsoft Word or something. If I, I mean, maybe that's overselling it a little bit and overstating a little bit, but I think we do have that a little bit of influence because we interact with people, and so we have the ability to maybe, just like you said, kind of, just be that little, urging that might help them make that change.
Little light on the right path.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And I think, again, that goes back to motive, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
If you're a person, if you're all, people can tell who you are just like you can tell who they are. And honestly, this business is so much more about people than it is computers. I mean, you guys all know that, obviously, but one of the things that I used to love to say was, I have a degree in psychology, which turns out to be the perfect degree for helping people with computers.
Yeah, exactly.
They make them crazy. So,
yeah. It's true. Yeah. Well, and also just all those personal interactions. I've had clients who say to me, this is like a therapy session. I mean, we're just doing computer stuff, but they actually feel like something's happening where they feel better, and it's just from like interacting in a positive way and getting through whatever thing was driving them a little crazy with the computer. So yeah,
I'm going to say something controversial that I don't usually say, and I'm just going to say it right out here, which is that when you do that thing you just said, Joe, when that person says they feel better, this felt like therapy.
Yeah.
That it's what you might call spiritually might call an energy shift if you were a monk, or a healing, right?
Yeah.
It is. Think about what the feeling of relief does to people. If you just stop for a minute and imagine to yourself the last time you were upset about something and then you got to feel relief, how that feels afterwards. We could put that in a hypo, we'd all be retired. So yeah, I do think there is a really profound element to making sure that people at some point, are regularly having that experience that feels like a relief, like progress, like improvement of some kind, right? And sometimes a change is just as good. Just a change is good. So
yeah. Yep.
I mean, we are doing that in a lot of ways every day, because as a colleague once pointed out, it's like people don't call you when things are good. There's always something wrong. Like, you're on the hook for something wrong, and your job is to calm them down and bring them back into a good space. Whether it's like one person who, has trouble with their computer, or an entire organization that's down, it's still the same amount of stress to that person. And so I think, that's 90% of our job, as you said. Like, it's just a huge portion of it.
And think of all the conversations we've had with where it's, say, it's more subtle than that even. It's a business owner who is continuing to have a specific kind of problem because their staff is not adopting a behavior, a technology behavior that we need them to adopt. So then you've got somebody who's frustrated, who's got other people that they have to be responsible for and affect their change. So you're working with that person. You're also trying to evaluate what it is that's going to make the difference for the team so they can do the adoption they need to do. Geez, we should all have psychology degrees.
You're the only one in the room that does, but I think I'm not going back to school.
Wow. Well,
my daughter's actually studying psychology, so she'll be the,
Oh, terrific.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And Shelley, just to be selfish, can you speak to the possible ageism that someone might encounter?
Yes.
By the way, this has been a terrific conversation with you, and you're such an important voice out in our community, and you're so super smart that, if you were, I would have you run my tech company all day long. I'd just give you the keys and then
nice.
Thank you for your time tonight. We really appreciate it.
You're really awesome.
And bringing a lot of important topics that aren't talked about nowhere nearly as enough.
Well, thank you. And you guys have given me the opportunity and asked me great questions that sent me off. So thank you. Thank you. And you're willing to use the B word and be brave about doing some things in our community that we don't always think about doing. So thank you for that as well. We all get better with that attitude. So thank you for being that group in the community. Ageism is funny because it's one of those things. I think it's just a tough one to get around. There's so much of it in our culture and in our politics right now. There are people who think that if you live in a nursing home, you shouldn't get to vote because obviously
wow,
you don't have a brain cell anymore. And there are people who will just have the bias that younger and newer is better. And I think it's really like anything else we do where we have to teach people something about ourselves. Like, what do they want? What do we want them to know about the advantage of working with a person who's older? Like, what is that advantage? If I know what the advantage of working with me is, then I'm confident in it and I'm comfortable with it. I like to make the joke that, you want to stick by me in the zombie apocalypse because I won't, you all will get away. They'll catch me because I'm slow. I'm old and slow, right? So there's always an advantage to having someone with a different age perspective, whether it's older or younger, right? It's not usually the younger voices who get told they don't have something valuable to say. I had a customer a long time ago who was an Alaska Airlines pilot, and I went to see him one day and he was on fire. He was so mad because he was going to have to retire because he was turning 60.
Oh,
right. It's a pilot thing. And I said to him, dude, I want you in the cockpit. I think you're better with that experience. I mean, and I understand reflexes and that kind of thing, but I think we have to figure out what the advantage is. And I think it's really important to not compete in that foot race. Jerry, you and I are not going to strap on the sneakers.
Like
right?
Sam.
Exactly.
Where did I come in here?
We're not doing that anymore, but what
Sure.
do we have to bring to the table, right? Maturity, perspective, history.
Well, certain expertise that can only be gained over time. I mean, like, why don't we just implicitly like respect that more in our culture, that, you know, you just have to have the years in the field or the years of life experience to gain certain kinds of wisdom and expertise. And so, I mean, why do we discount that so much? You know, that's a like extremely important perspective, like literally institutional knowledge. And, you know, sure, young people have, you know, fresh ideas, beginner's mind, you know, new perspectives. Great. That's also a thing, but it's not like the only thing, and it doesn't negate the other things. So
Right.
yeah,
That's the
it's
diversity in the
interesting
room kind of thing too, you know?
Yeah.
Exactly.
One way I like to think about that, and it is a really good point, Joe, is that, you know, there's a place for the brand new, young, fresh idea, the latest research, the latest knowledge. And there's also a place for the ability to synthesize, to take all these bits and put them into the right context, to look at it from different perspectives. So that's very often something that more experienced folks can do, is to take that and then synthesize and pull it together.
Yeah, I'm sure we're not going to solve it tonight, but you know, there's certain biological things.
I thought we just did.
They were pretty close.
I mean, there's certain biological things that we're fighting, you know, in terms, I was listening to a podcast where they were talking about a technologist podcast where their brains were slowing down at 40. The host of the show was talking about how he constantly uses reminders on the phone because his brain isn't quite as functional as it once was, or his retention for the small things. And, you know, privately amongst the three of us, Sam and Joe and I, we had a colleague in our field who really struggled with the latest certification test. Someone, you know, who shouldn't have had any issue at all. And I know I'll admittedly tell you that I had to take it a couple times, and Joe passed it on his, you know, first go round. So, you know, there's certain you just can't fight nature at some point, but you got to dig in and dig your heels in and work a little harder, I guess.
I think that's a really good observation, Jerry. Yeah, not the same as we were. You know, as I like to joke, I'm not 50 anymore. You know, so yeah, I think it's important to be mindful of that and to partner with people. Which is, I'm huge on that. I could talk for another half hour about the lifting all the boats and partnering with your colleagues and sending everybody business. I mean, there's so much money to be made out there. We can help each other do it. But finding someone who fits that spot, you know.
Well, I mean, that extra half-hour conversation, that means you have to come back. I mean,
and you know what else? You know what else? We didn't get to talk about my favorite business topic, which is the hold harmless.
Yes.
Okay, we're getting something on the calendar as soon as we finish this.
Yeah, absolutely. That's amazing. Well, we've been starting to cook a little idea of like another takeover show. So maybe having some kind of all-star guests of the podcast join forces and just take the place of the three of us. I mean, we're just, you know, the other three bearded white guys or whatever. So just put us in the corner and just bring some new voices in. So maybe if you'd be interested, Shelley, I think that could be an interesting way to explore more of what you want to talk about, and with some of our other colleagues as well.
I would love that. We'll just get some new bearded white guys. And
okay.
And Susan.
Yes,
there you
absolutely.
Go. Nice.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, this is a great conversation. Lots of great contributions in the chat as well. So for anyone who wants to go back and rewatch this, because I think a lot comes through in the video and with the contributions of the live chat as well, look for the link on the show notes when the episode airs on audio, and you can watch it on video on YouTube. And for the benefit of the patrons who joined us live, I want to just put the offer out there for free merchandise if you've made it this far. So we have a special link, commandcontrolpower.com/DBQ tech. So that is our special link today.
Oh, look at that.
I think I made the link here. Let's see. to promote our new shop online. So not to make this a shilling merchandise kind of thing, but free merch for the patrons.
Shameless, Joe. Shameless.
Shameless plug for our new shop. So commandcontrolpower.com. We have a new shop with new merch there. You can order it in time for ACES if you're listening live, and you get free stuff if you go to that link, commandcontrolpower.com/dbqtech, all lowercase, for our patrons who are listening live here. And I just want to take the opportunity also. Sorry, Shelley, did you have something else?
Well, I forgot. I had to give a shout out. Tim Pearson said to say hi from the Pacific Northwest.
Oh, awesome.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
I will not be at the show, but I will be at Mac DevOps. I just couldn't do them all. Had a bunch of stuff coming up. But anyway, I just wanted to give that shout out.
Sorry to miss you there.
Excellent. Yeah, we'll miss you there. I decided kind of last second to go to ACES, so I'm going to see Sam there. But yeah, it looks like a great conference. A lot of great people showing up. But unfortunately, you won't be there, Shelley. But I want to take the opportunity to amplify everything you said tonight, Shelley, because this has been such an amazing conversation that just went in directions we hadn't planned. And so it was great to just be able to bring this. I mean, as we do, having this podcast as a way of amplifying some voices in the community. So I'm really glad we got to feature you again on the show and amplify some of what you've said here tonight. And I encourage everyone to share the episode with more people in the community beyond just our audience, because I think it's, again, really important stuff that we covered tonight. So thank you so much, Shelley, for being here.
I really appreciate the role you guys play in bringing voices out to the community. So thank you so much. I loved it.
It was an awesome conversation. Yeah. And I can't wait for you to take over the show with some of our other frequent guests. And I think that'd be really fun for people. Yeah.
And Shelley, if someone wanted to reach out to you personally and find you, what would be the best way for them to do that?
I have updated my LinkedIn profile, and my email address is Shelley, SHELLEY, @dbq.technology.
Beautiful.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much again, Shelley Watson from DBQ Technology, formerly of Wheelwrights, for joining us on Command Control Power. It was so great to talk to you.